Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode number 7 of the Screaming Beaver Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Jackson. On this episode of the podcast, we have Bob Vedan, or Mr. Vedan as many of us know him. Mr. Vedan was the VCI gym teacher and coach of many of the sports teams at VCI. He was a mentor for myself. We traveled the world together. Been to Australia twice with him. He was my hockey coach, my basketball coach. We had a lot of good times, and a lot of my best memories from high school. Mr. Vedan was at the front of the line, whether it be canoe trips, gym classes, basketball tournaments. So this is a very exciting podcast for me. It was something I was kind of holding off to do until I could get him live in my little studio. Unfortunately, with COVID, it seemed like a good time to do it. The sound quality is not the greatest. You get used to it, but it was my first time recording someone remotely, and it didn't go. It's not perfect. Anyway, I hope you can still enjoy the podcast, and we'll get right to it. All right, and we're live. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty well, yourself?
Not too bad. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yes.
It's quite a project you got going here.
Yeah, it's something I'm trying out, and people seem to enjoy it. So, how are things out in BC these days?
Oh, pretty good. We just survived quite a windstorm yesterday. Power was out in the area, and I went skiing this morning, and a lot of trees were down on the mountain, but at least I got to ski, and it was a nice day.
Oh, good. How's the COVID situation these days?
Well, we're not as serious. It's serious, but it's not as dire as it is in Ontario. Our numbers are better, but still, the numbers are there. So everybody is abiding by what we have to do, staying close to home. We've stayed here in Vernon since last March, so haven't been anywhere or done much other than enjoy life in the Okanagan. Good. Which is not too bad. It's not too bad.
There's worse places, I guess you could be.
Yeah. The biggest regret is not being able to visit with grandkids, but there's always FaceTime, which is fantastic.
Yeah. How many grandkids do you have now?
Got 3. Mike's got 1. He and Kylie in Pemberton, Whistler. 2-year-old Amelia and Jeff and Katie in Toronto. Cameron is 9 and Allison is 5. Okay. And we do FaceTime with them at least once a week.
Yeah, so I see videos of Jeff with them out on the BMXs and the mountain bikes and stuff. So
yeah,
the apple's not falling far from the tree, eh?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So we might as well get into it.
Okay.
So your early life, where were you born?
Okay, I was born in England.
Oh, okay.
Which is. I'm First Nations, my background on my dad's side. My dad left Caribou Chilcotin in 1940 as a 16-year-old to go to war, as many young Canadian men did. Left his home territory and overseas, and met my mom, a British war bride, and I was born shortly after the war, end of the war. My older brother was born in 1944, before the war ended. So I spent the first few years of my life in England because Dad was playing professional hockey in Switzerland and Scotland and England.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that.
And I can remember seeing his skates and wondering, how do these things work? And what do you do when you put all that gear on? What's it like? And I had I watched him play. I remember seeing him play in England, but I didn't put skates on until I came to Canada in 1952.
Oh, okay.
I was 6 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So
I was in contact with one of your family members who wishes to remain anonymous, but he told me to ask you how your boat ride over from England was. Did you have any?
My boat ride, yeah. Well, that was a little exciting. On the SS Canberra, we left, I guess it was May, from Portsmouth, England, across the North Atlantic, and my brother and I were, I guess I was still 5, I hadn't quite turned 6 yet, and my brother a couple years older. We were playing around the boat and so on, and I fell and dislocated my elbow, but continued ripping around and enjoyed the trip, and landed in Quebec, and then on down to Toronto and Ontario.
Okay,
so I think it was something like 10-day trip over. I can't remember exactly, but
oh, really?
Yeah, and an interesting thing on our documents, it said that we were returning Canadians because we were returning on my dad's military fare. He was returning armed forces with his family 5-6 years after the end of the war. So a bit of history there, but
yeah.
Yeah.
And your mom was coming to Canada for the first time? So
first time, yeah. It must have been a bit of a traumatic trip for her, I suppose, leaving her family and leaving England and having survived the war and coming to Canada, to a new country. But she adapted, and we were a family of 3 when we arrived, and then within 5 years, 2 more were added. So I've got 3 sisters and a brother.
Oh, nice. So when you moved back to Canada, where were you settled? Like in Toronto, or
first in Toronto for a little bit, and then Hamilton. My dad had a hockey friend who said there's lots of work in Hamilton, as being steel town. So Dad worked there, and we lived out in rural Niagara Peninsula, outside of a small town, which was a small town at the time, Stony Creek, in the village of Tapleytown. And that's where I more or less grew up and started my Canadian adventure, let's say.
Yeah.
Got introduced to a variety of things, and different things, of course, baseball and hockey and all the things that go along with growing up in Canada.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you're of an Indigenous background. Did you live on a reservation as a child, or?
I've never lived in a reservation. My home reserve, I'm a member of a sugarcane Indian band, Williams Lake, up in the Caribou, Shquapan First Nation, or Shuswap First Nation. And those roots go a long way back through my dad. And so having retired out here, I've become much more acquainted with my native heritage, and built on that, and met a lot more family members that I didn't know existed, First Nations people.
Okay.
And it's been an adventure that way after retirement for me.
Yeah. And so, do you want to get into the First Nations conversation? I know there are a lot of things.
I can. I don't know if you have any questions.
Well, I've got a lot of questions because I'm not I'm not really that educated on the subject. I was talking to Randy Tollers, who actually teaches a class in First Nations at the high school, and she told me I should ask you about the water situation that's going on there. I guess
on different reserves.
Yeah, I guess that's a big issue these days.
Well, no, many reserves are living in third world conditions. There's no question about it. And that's, the conditions on reserve are not the best, for sure. There are some fairly well-to-do reserves, depending on location. For example, here in the Okanagan, everything depends on location, of course, and the type of economy they are able to develop. But the majority of reserves in far-off places, they kind of get overlooked and have gotten overlooked. Hopefully that's going to change. But there's been many promises over the years. There's been many promises made, many promises broken or not lived up to. So it's been a bit of a disappointment that way.
Yeah.
I try to stay involved with the Native community, with Native gatherings and family gatherings. And probably my brother is more attuned. He's He's a retired professor at University of British Columbia and was director of the First Nations House of Learning at UBC. And he's stayed very apprised of Native issues, and we have some interesting discussions. And I, through him and through through family here, I've gotten to become quite familiar with what it is to be a First Nations person on reserve and what life is like there. There's still a long way to go. As I say, many promises have not been lived up to. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission you've probably heard about is still got a ways to go, but it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully it will move forward and bring some results. And of course, the only time you hear about Native issues is when there's a protest or a roadblock or a blocking of a railway line or a pipeline issue.
Yeah.
And fisheries and the Mi'kmaq people in Eastern Canada. Well, they're trying to fulfill their treaty rights, and again, in many cases, promises weren't lived up to.
Yeah.
So,
just gonna,
in my opinion, they're coming from a justifiable position.
Yeah.
And going back to the history of me coming back to Canada, we didn't go back to my dad's home reserve. He knew what would be ahead for his kids. We all would have ended up in the residential school. And there's 5 of us, and statistically, probably 3 of the 5 of us would be dead now.
Oh.
And the 5 of us, we all we've achieved at least one post-secondary degree. And the chances of any of us doing that coming off the reserve is rather remote. So we dodged the bullet there, and Dad made a good decision by moving to Eastern Canada, away from the reserve and away from that influence.
I'm just
so we were fortunate that way.
I'm going to have to cut you off, Mr. Dan, for 1 second. I just got to go get my dog to be quiet. He's barking upstairs. So just
Okay,
1 second. We'll pause the recording and... Okay, we're back recording again. Yeah, he's old and he's deaf and half blind, so he sometimes decides he wants to bark at nothing. So
he wants to be heard.
Yeah, I put him to bed there. So we were talking about your family all managed to come through all right, and
We did.
yeah. So do you think it's a problem? Is it lack of funding? What's the root cause of the issues?
The root cause of the issues. If I knew that, Jason, I'd be a very wise man.
Yeah.
But I think basically it's the frustration of First Nations people not receiving what they were promised in the treaties. And if you look at the history of it, there are treaties that have been put in place, but very often they're not lived up to. For example, a good example would be Six Nations, which has been in the news recently, Caledonia, Ontario. Their treaty land was, I think it was 6 miles either side of the Grand River from Lake Erie up to the source, and which is quite a large territory if you know your geography. But that was frittered away and whittled away, and now I think it's 9 miles by 9 miles, square miles of land that's dedicated to that reserve, when it should have been probably 30 times that.
Okay.
So they've lost land.
Yeah.
And my home reserve is similar. There was the town of Williams Lake actually was native land at one time, but it was taken by the community, and it was taken back, or not taken back, but it was removed from the reserve and taken by the city.
Okay.
Of Williams Lake, the town of Williams Lake. And there's so many issues like that. Promises that weren't kept, haven't been kept. But there has to be a mutual understanding. If there's an issue, both parties have to come to a table and discuss it, and that's what's happening. And everything's been put on the back burner with COVID, of course. And I just heard that one of the reserves up in the caribou that I'm familiar with is Cannon Lake has been infested with COVID, unfortunately, and they had a lockdown. They weren't allowing anybody on the reserve to enter the reserve, but somehow it got in there. So there's issues like that, and we're all facing that. And until we get past this pandemic, I think we're not going to be dealing with much of this in the way of politics. Yeah, it's going to be.
Everything's kind of focused on that right now.
Yeah, and justifiably so.
Yeah. So one issue that I am familiar with is the sports teams being named after native.
Yes, yeah,
things.
like the Redskins. Well, with all due respect, there's some of the names that are acceptable and most are not.
Okay.
It's sort of, I don't know.
Can you give me an example of one that would be acceptable? And
well, the name Warriors, for example, VCI Warriors. The Warrior is not. It could be native, could be not native, but in the case of VCI Warriors, it was a native symbol, an Indian head.
Yes. So when I first started at VCI, I remember seeing some uniforms that were kicking around that from probably the 80s with an Indian head on them.
Yes, I didn't take any offense to it.
No.
I don't think there's any offense intended, but the warrior chants that some of the teams come up with, and it's I can see it's quite offensive.
Yeah.
To a lot of people. I can understand it being like that. So that's probably it's an issue, but it's small compared to the conditions that our First Nations people are living under.
Yeah, exactly.
And around Van Cleek Hill, the closest reserve would be Oka, and we know all the issue that happened there.
Yeah.
And if you go down to Akwesasne and Cornwall, that's a fairly wealthy reserve. Or not, I wouldn't say wealthy, but they're doing very well economically.
Well, they have the
location, and
they have a casino there, right?
and Ganawagi in Montreal.
Yeah.
Again, location, but there are issues there as well. There have been some promises with treaties that haven't been lived up to. So it's not going to be an ongoing process, and hopefully getting through the pandemic, we'll get back to that and other political things that we can start working on.
Yeah. So somebody living on the reserve, do they have a source of income or a job, or how does that work?
Well, depending on the reserve, depending on the economic development on the reserve. There are some reserves that, of course, the land that they were given is not the best. Pile of rock, trees, and lakes. If there's mining or if there's logging or whatever, it's possible. But economic development would definitely help. But in some cases, they're living in a difficult place to creating economic development, being far away from mainstream Canada, and not having the resources to work with. So it's and it wasn't by choice that Native people live on reserves. These were plots of land that were designated as lands that they are allowed to inhabit, live on, and their home, but not the best land, not the best circumstances. And if you look at the Indian Act, it's very restrictive. Historically, it was very restrictive. Not being able to leave the reserve to work and staying on the reserve, there's not much to do in terms of employment. Living, I suppose you could say, in a welfare state, but again, a very limited welfare state, where the resources aren't there.
Yeah. So, like, on these reserves, I know there's different varying levels of them, but there's electricity and running water. I guess
Not always.
The water's a problem.
Water's a problem. Electricity is a problem. Housing is a problem. Huge issue.
Yeah.
Health services is huge. Education. They have to leave if they're going to get any education at all, they have to leave the reserve in many cases. And to take a young Indian person and remove them from their home, and which was done with the residential schools. They were taken forcibly from their homes, and in these times, when the post residential school situation, for a young Indian person to leave their home, it's very traumatic, difficult, and not an easy route to take. It's not and very often a very difficult road to follow. So it's not easy.
No. Well, I think we could do a whole podcast just on this. But,
I think so. And I don't claim to be an expert, but just from what I've observed, and as I said, I was fortunate that my dad decided not to come back to the reserve in one respect, but in another respect, I lost contact with my native heritage, and but I picked up on it since over the years.
I was having a conversation with a guy at work about the Redskins and that stuff, and I actually reached out to Jeff because I felt comfortable asking him his opinion on the situation. So he made several good points that I was not even aware of. So it's a good conversation to have, and I encourage anyone who doesn't necessarily follow it to maybe look into it and explore some of the options, or reach out to someone you know.
Well, there are various names that various ethnic groups are labeled with, and to use some of these other ethnic labels, I don't think it would happen. In the non-native community, so it is a controversial issue, but not the main issue that's causing difficulty for Native people.
Yeah. So where did you go to school after, like university or?
Well, before I grew up in, as I said, Stony Creek. Went to school there, elementary school through. I guess I started in age 6. It would have been grade 1, and 1 through 8 in Ontario, and then high school in Stony Creek, Ontario, which is now a part of Hamilton, Ontario. And then I went to McMaster University, got a Physed degree there and a BA, and then to Teachers College, and that took us to being hired to somewhere in the province to teach, and I applied to several different places, and we ended up in Vankleek Hill. My wife was already teaching in Hamilton. She graduated a couple of years before me. It was when I graduated, it was 4 years plus 1 year of Teachers College, and she went straight out of university and straight into teaching with the summer school. So she'd been teaching in Hamilton, and I, of course, applied around Hamilton and that area. And but we went to it was a job fair at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto, and we said to one another, the first place that'll take both of us, let's go for an adventure. So we ended up in Vancouver Hill. I ended up teaching at VCI, and she ended up teaching at Hawkesbury High School.
What year was that in that you came?
That was 1971.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a few years ago now. And so that's how we ended up in Vancouver Hill. And growing up in Southern Ontario, as I said, played all the traditional school sports, and mostly football and track. Most of my sports were actually in the community. Baseball and fastball and hockey were the main ones.
So did you ever have a football team in Vankleek Hill when you were there? Or?
Oh, yes, yeah. I first started coaching from 1971 till I think it was 76 or 77. We had football.
Okay.
And I coached the football team, assistant coach to begin with, and senior team. And we had a junior and a senior team. So my second year at VC, I think it was my second year, started coaching the junior team. And then I think we won the championship, and then the following year or two, I coached the senior team, and until we ran out of schools to play against. We had Hawkesbury and ourselves and Plantagenet at the end. Initially, we played against Maxville, which became Tagwa. Glengarry was the Glengarry Prescott Russell League.
Okay.
It was good football. We turned out some pretty good players.
So who are some of those players? Anyone we would know, or?
Well, Wayne Lee.
Wayne Lee, yeah.
Yeah. Names Jeff Hudson, Dean LeDuc. Who else? Jeff Volkert. I have to go through my archive of people here, but Danny Kirby played CIU football, university football. Warren Lee. There was a lot of good football players, and some went on to university, played football, and it was a good level of football for rural schools.
Yeah,
the referees would come down from Ottawa, and they would comment that you guys know what you're doing here, and this is a lot better than some high school games we do. We referee in Ottawa.
Oh, really?
So that was encouraging.
Yeah.
And I could see when I first started. I remember one of the first years I was coaching junior. I guess my second year. We were playing against Glengarry, and I can't remember the fellow's name, but he was a soccer player, and they're lining up at the 40, 45-yard line, and I thought, oh, they're going to punt. They're lining up for a field goal, and this young guy kicked a field goal from about 45 yards out.
Oh, jeez.
And he ended up, I can't remember his name now, but he ended up kicking for Calgary Stampeders, and he had a career there as a kicker.
Oh, nice. I bet you it was a mix something or other.
Yeah, it surprised the heck out of me when they did that.
Yeah. I heard the Hawkesbury-Van Lakill rivalry in football, I think it was Jamie Cunning said that you didn't want to run out of bounds in Hawkesbury because you didn't know if you were going to get back on the field or not.
Yeah, Jamie, he was at VCI before me. He'd already graduated, but I can believe that. Yeah. It was pretty strong rivalry. Of course, I became good friends with the coaches, but the rivalry was pretty strong.
Yeah.
I remember probably our toughest games were against Hawkesbury. Kevin Cartner, he was quarterback at Hawkesbury, and they did beat us once in the senior final. I think we beat them the next year, but it was a really hard fought defensive game, and I think it was only one or two touchdowns in the whole game, and it was a strong defensive battle. Good football, and the whole community was out watching the game.
Yeah.
The games that I remember, it was quite an event for the community.
Yeah, we're kind of missing that now. I know that there is football GD now, and Van Lakill sends half the team over. They kind of combine a team, and they've been pushing to have like a Friday night game so the community could all come out and have like a Texas-style football game on a Friday night, but it hasn't happened yet.
That'd be quite the atmosphere. You've got lights at the field in Van Lakill now, haven't you?
Yeah, we got lights on the field, so it would be.
That would be fantastic to see. I'd love to see that personally.
Yeah, well, if we can make it happen, I'll send you an invite. But
okay,
we'll
see what happens.
Yeah, my daughter played soccer in St. Lazare this year, and Hamish Cunning's youngest started playing football at the same field, so we went out a few times to go watch the football game there. And this is a junior high school, and they have a synthetic field right on the side of the 40 highway there, and it's lights, and it's just incredible the facility that they have. And we played soccer all summer in the Montreal League, and we didn't play on any grass fields hardly at all.
Wow.
All the soccer was on synthetic field. In Quebec, they certainly put the money into the sports. But hopefully.
But there's nothing like a good old grass field.
Oh yeah,
for soccer.
Yeah.
I think soccer should be played on a grass field, and but football either way would work. But that would be quite something to see at the BCI.
Yeah. So when I remember, basketball was always the big sport in Vankleek through much of the 80s and the 90s. It's kind of petered off a little bit there now, but I got a question here from Jennifer Barton from Norwood, Ontario, and she writes, Mr. Vedan, two-part question. What was the greatest basketball team you ever coached, and why did you choose the 1989 VCI Senior Girls?
Well, Jen, that's a good question, and you're advocating for yourself for sure. That question from Jen doesn't surprise me. They were fun to coach. I really enjoyed coaching the girls' teams.
Yeah. So who all would have been on that team?
To pick out one team is not fair, but I suppose statistically, I'd have to pick the 1982 senior team, the team that won OFSA.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting experience because, that year, we won the OFSA as a junior team, and I hadn't coached senior until that team went up to senior, and Jacques Castonguay and I talked about it, and he said, well, why don't you continue with these guys? And so I continued up at that would be grade 12 and 13. And grade 12, I think we lost in the OSSA final to a team from Bay Ridge. And Bay Ridge had won OFSA Single A the 2 previous years. And Barry O'Connor, he told me that we were probably, our team was probably amongst the top 3 or 4 in the province and Single A. And we could have very well competed. So the next year we went, and not knowing what to expect, we load on the team van, and of course back in those days I was the coach, I was the bus driver, and taking care of everything. I can't remember if anybody else came along with me to help out, but anyway, such a good level of basketball. That was the years we played in the Cornwall League. And we won the Cornwall League, and they didn't invite us back. We beat CCBS in the final, and that was a fantastic couple of years we played. And that team, I probably had there were 12 players on the team, and Peter Higginson, the manager, he could have played as well. He was the tallest fellow one of the tallest guys in the roster. And out of those 12 guys, I could have probably started any 5 of them.
Okay.
And I remember going to a tournament in Ottawa. I think it was a referees tournament. And I said, I'm not going to start. I don't want to name a starting 5, but these are the guys I'm going to start. And it was sort of the second 5. So I started those guys. And guys like Ed Williams, Rod Lacroix, Rod Wenrick, Alan McMillan, Ken Soulier, and we're leading. And I thought, oh boy, okay, now I got to put on my starting 5. And then these guys, the starting 5, they were itching to play, so they got on there. There was no way we were going to keep these guys down. And so I did that a few times, not trying to play tricks on anybody, but just to create a balance. And that team was probably the most balanced team with depth, and these guys would play basketball 24/7. There was a court, they called it the court. I'm not sure if it's still there.
It is still there.
Development. There should be a plaque there somewhere, because all BCI guys, they all went down there. You could call it rat ball, but it was a good level of basketball. Guys came up from Hawkesbury, guys like Dan Golding, and a bunch of guys came up and played. And Hawkesbury was was the big competition, but these guys all knew one another. And so that's how that team developed. And we went to offset, was at Camp Borden near Barrie, Ontario. And, one game at a time, we played our first game against this team. And I think we won all our games. And then the first team we played, I can't remember where they were from, but we ended up playing them in the final. And we just built on that. And I remember Frank Salazar, who was one of the, you could call him starting guard, along with Craig Patterson. He sprained his ankle, and he wanted to play in that final so badly. But one of my other guards, they shared, Al McMillan and Ken Sulier, they came up, stepped forward, and did a great job. We ended up winning the thing. And I remember the ride home from, we drove straight home, I think, after the game. The game finished around 4 in the afternoon. And I was driving. I was pumped, of course, and could have driven anywhere and, on that energy. And we got home. A big welcoming committee group of people came out, and they welcomed us. It was quite an event, and quite a memory.
So was that like Mike Baker's team, or was
no,
this before?
No, Mike Baker's team was a couple of years later. There was John Turnbull, Mike Folkert, Jeff Dupel. They were all in that 82 team. And Rod Renwick, just trying to remember off the top of my head. But 2 years later, it was Mike Baker's team. Of course, that off year, 83 team, Mike Baker was on that team, if I recall correctly. And we lost out to, I can't remember who it was, Niasa. And the next year we went, in 84, we went to Niasa, or to OFSA, and ended up winning the bronze medal. And looking at the draw, we as it played out, we weren't able to play for the silver medal, but I think we lost by 1 or 2 points to the team that ended up winning in our semifinal game, and they blew away the other team, in the final. They met in the final, so it was interesting that way. And Mike Baker's team was a great team. A lot of depth there. Mike Baker, Mike Hatz, Mike Peveril came down from Montreal. 6 foot was Mike, 6'6", which helped. And of course, Mike went on to Concordia and won with Concordia Stingers. I think it was '89. They won the CIU, the Canadian University Championship.
Yeah.
So that was a good team. But after that, things kept clicking along, and we had good teams. We had players like Trevor Allen were on that team, the 84 team, and he was, I think, maybe in grade 10, and then he continued on, and we played against some good teams and did fairly well. Almont was the big competition in the OSA, and they had a player, Corey Hallis was his name, who went on and played Eastern Michigan. Okay. And I saw him in Syracuse years later. He was in March Madness, first round of March Madness with East Michigan. And I had a chat with him. He was staying at the same hotel. I went down with some boys and took Mike and Jeff and my sons and a couple other guys down. Saw first round of March Madness, and East Michigan State, Corey Hallis' team from Almont, they went on and made it to the Sweet 16. And they bowed out there, but that's the level of ball we were playing against.
Yeah.
And we'd go down and play exhibition games and tournaments down in Montreal against some of the CJEP schools. And we'd do okay, we'd often get our butts whipped, but you're only as good as who you play against, and that brought our game up another notch. And during your time, basketball was still strong.
Yeah, I was trying to make a case with Jason Hall a few minutes ago that that the 92-93 team would have given the teams from the 80s a run just because of the sheer size.
Been interesting. Yeah, it was. The game had changed a little bit. It was a little bit more structured than that at that time. I more or less the 82 team, the opposite team. I had a few systems, offensive and defensive, but they had such good instinct, and they knew what to do against a certain defense, and they just overpowered people. And but during that time, we had much more structured systems. And I think the 3-point shot came in.
Yeah.
And that made a difference. Had people like Mike Horner and a lot of guys, Rob Dobransky, Andrew Allen could shoot. A lot of good shooters.
Yeah, John Simpson was the.
John Simpson,
he was probably the best shooter from that era I can remember.
Yeah. John was a smart player, very smart player.
Yeah.
And very intelligent, knew the game, and that team, we went to OFSA in St. Thomas.
Yeah,
Adam Nicholson was on that team, and of course Jason Wilson,
Chris Jones,
Chris Jones, and Mike Booth,
and Marcus Freeman.
Marcus Freeman, yeah. And Les. I'm not sure if Les Haas was on.
Yeah, Les was on the team too. It was a pretty tall team.
It was.
You look at the size where Les is your fourth shortest player on the team. That's a pretty big team.
It helps. Yeah. You can't teach height.
Yeah. Jason Wilson is a 6'1" point guard.
Yeah.
And Mike Horner is your best dunker on the floor, and he's 5'10". So.
Yeah. Is he 5'10"? He played like 6'4".
Yeah. So, I don't know, we were having that conversation. Jason said I was on crack. There was no way that that team, recency bias, right? So.
Yeah. Well, they were good athletes on that team. In the 82 team, they were good athletes. Those guys played soccer. They played, if there was football in school, they would have played football. But they also played hockey. Craig Patterson was a good hockey player. Mike Folkert played hockey. Who else in there played hockey? But it's just like the 92 team, 93 team. You had Mike Horner, a very good hockey player, and a few other guys. Andrew,
yeah.
Of course. And
Marcus.
Marcus Horner. I just don't want to leave any names out here. Over the years, there's so many good. And that was the thing about VCI. You had guys played all sports. You had a chance to play all sports. And I think in a lot of cases, going back in the day, that's what kept them ticking, education-wise, kept them tuned into school and getting an education, getting through high school and getting through the sports season. And I think it was a valuable thing to have in a school curriculum. And these guys played sports in the community and contributed to the community sports as well. And now are, like yourself, involved in your own kids. Facebook is amazing. So I get really a warm feeling when I see some of the pictures of you guys coaching and with your families and your kids, and involved with them and in so many different ways.
Yeah, well, I owe a lot of my coaching and volunteer work to yourself and people like Mr. McCollum, and I don't think I'd be doing any of this stuff if it weren't for yourself and the guidance I got going through high school. And like high school is the best time of my life. You know you're going to see all your best friends every day, and
lifelong friends.
Yeah, I look at it like Haley's 10 now, and it's kind of sad because she's kind of halfway through her sports career when you look at it. She's only got another 8 years to go, and it's going to be done. So
yeah. But she'll find her way. She'll find sport.
Oh yeah, she enjoys it. It's but we just have to get things back into the schools and
yes. Yeah.
You know.
I can't imagine teaching in these times. It's got to be so difficult from the health perspective, but also from just the continuation of activities and the lack of normal school activities. It's got to be really difficult. It's difficult right across the community, I'm sure.
So, another thing that you were heavily involved in school was school trips. We did some exchanges. We did some canoe trips. Let's talk about the canoe trips for a little bit. What year did you start doing the trips to Mont Tremblant or Algonquin Park? Or
going back, let's see, some of the first trips we did. We'd do local canoe days. We'd go down to Carillon Park and spend a day down there just on the water and doing some stuff, doing some orienteering and doing some canoe games and so on. And but then I've got to try to remember. Probably back in the late 70s, there was a cadet corps in Vankleek Hill, and they did a couple of trips that we did, and that got me interested. Jean-Louis Diamond and Jacques Castonguay. Jean-Louis didn't do any of the trip, but he supported us with whatever we needed. And I remember doing a trip up to, first one I remember was up to Lake Baptiste near Bancroft. Guy Plouffe, Dominique Michelin Plouffe, Sylvie Plouffe's dad. He was a Mr. Canoe guy, and he was a neighbor. So went along on that trip, and that got me hooked. I'd done a bit of canoeing before, but then so that would be late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And then we did a few trips up there out of his cottage, and up into Algonquin Park. One particular trip I remember back in the day was Heather Baker, Mike's sister. I'm not sure, Mike must have done one, but I remember her that group being on a trip. And
so that would have been Jennifer Barton's group.
Pardon?
That would have been Jennifer Barton's group. Yeah, Heather.
That's right. Yeah. Heather Baker, Heather Mahan. Heather, she's married to Reed Mahan.
Oh, no, I think I got the wrong person then.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they live in Vankleek Hill, but but that's the one I remember. And it would have been Jen Barton's era. And so we started then, and it was we started the grade 13 course. That became part of that curriculum.
Yeah.
And we incorporated leadership and a lot of other stuff. It was kind of a coming together and getting off on the right step. It was a highlight of the course as far as I was concerned.
Oh yes,
it was a good course, but it was a highlight of the school year.
Yes, it was.
To get out and we did trips mostly to Mont Tremblant Park, North Lackland Row, up the north side of Mont Tremblant, and some interesting experiences, interesting times, fun times.
Yeah. I remember our grade 13 year, we were all canoeing along, and you were leading the pack, and all of a sudden you put your hand up and everyone stopped, and it was really quiet, and you reached down and you scooped a big handful of water and you smelled it. He says, "There's beaver in this water." And everyone was like, "What? Beaver in the water?" And we went around the corner, and sure enough, there was a beaver dam. And I was so amazed Mr. Vedan could smell beaver. But then about 2 years later, I started going on the canoe trips as a chaperone. And I think I did it right up until you retired. And,
you did.
And every year, we would stop in the same place. And there was beaver in the water every single year. And
I guess I knew where the beaver lodge was.
Well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
but
it was an interesting story. Many interesting stories, but lots of fun, lots of activity. The hikes we did and the on water stuff. And I remember one year, Vicki Wilson's year, and the canoe trip we did, and Hurricane Hugo came through.
Oh, okay.
And we're going from the last couple of days. We'd go downstream, and we'd be picked up down the Rivière du Diable, Devil River, on the way down. And the night where we put in for our camp, Hurricane Hugo just blasted, and we had a good time. We got a big campfire going, and everybody was comfortable and warm. But we dragged our canoes up on shore, we thought, and in the morning, our canoes were almost being washed away. The water had risen that much from all the rain. But Aaron, Kerry Dawson, Angela Bailey, all that gang, all basketball players again. And I talked a while ago about basketball, mostly boys. And Jen asked the question, I better go back and explain that the enjoyment that I had coaching, working with the girls. There were some very good girls teams that came out of UCI.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and the results are there, provincially to prove it.
Yeah.
I mentioned Vicki Wilson and that gang, and they were really a keen group and hardworking group, but very coachable. Girls tend to be more coachable sometimes than guys.
Oh yes, I've coached both.
In a different respect.
Yeah. I kind of took over for the girls from club level. After I got into university there, I coached for several years, and Kyla Burwash and Nikki Cernakis and that group, and yeah, it was a lot easier coaching the girls. They would do what you asked them to, and first time, and there wasn't all the testosterone, I guess. In the
I suppose, yeah. And we had some pretty busy schedules, like going to various tournaments. We did a lot of traveling, and with both girls and boys teams. But I remember taking the girls down to Kingston to a lot of tournaments, Ottawa, and of course provincially when we made it to OFSA. And that was quite an experience for me. That was sort of by attrition. The girls needed a coach, and I thought, I guess I could probably do it. There's no football to coach in the fall, and I had volleyball coaches, so I could pick up on the girls basketball. I enjoyed it. I was very happy I did, and I was sorry to let it go. But Christine Campbell, she came along. She did a great job, and is still doing a great job with girls.
Yeah.
And there's a good history there, a good legacy there of great teams over the years, the girls' teams. But that canoe trip, when Hurricane Hugo came and almost flooded us out, the girls in that group, they stepped forward and they held their own. Vicki and Aaron and all that gang, Melanie Kirby. I shouldn't name names, but because I'll forget so many. There's so many people to remember. But good group of kids, and I guess Vicky's teaching up in Renfrew now.
Yeah, Jason as well.
With Jason, yeah. And carrying along the basketball program there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But those canoe trips were great.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun on them. It was the highlight of my fall. I've got a question here from Hamish Cunning from Vankleeville, Ontario. He asks, Mr. Vedan, do you remember our bike trip to Carillon Park when the campsite was overrun with raccoons for some strange reason? It was really weird. The other thing I remember was you ordering us pizza on that trip. We ate well that night.
Yeah, they delivered to Carillon Park from Hawkesbury, I guess. But I do remember that bike trip, but I also remember the canoe trip that Hamish was on. And Eric Dagg was on that trip. Who else would there be? That Corey O'Neill.
Yeah.
Those guys. And I'm not sure if it was probably Hamish. He started catching minnows out of the lake and started eating them raw. So we're into sushi here now.
Yeah, sushi long before his time.
So the challenge was on. Who had the courage, fortitude to down a live minnow? And I'm sure Hamish was the first one.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can see Hamish doing that.
Oh yes.
But that's another one of the memories. And I remember that bike trip. We had great bike trips too in the spring.
Yeah, I think
good way to get the spring going, and it was some awesome times. And that was our route. I think we usually left Vankleek Hill down to Dalkeith, down to Carillon Park, camped overnight, and then the next day we'd bike back.
Yeah, we missed out on our bike trip for some reason. Was it a grade 12 bike trip?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah,
so it was a grade 12 bike trip and grade 13 canoe trip.
Yeah, so grade 12, you weren't at VCI. You took a year.
That
would be 94.
That was the year I was vice principal, temporary vice principal at Pleasant Corners.
And what was that experience like?
That was great. My office was right beside the kindergarten. Mrs. Dabrowski and of course Linda Burwash. And I was over there helping out with the kids. I loved it. It was just like having 20 or 30 grandkids, and it was a great experience. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And that year, coached the grade 8 boys basketball team. Eric Freeman was on that team, and I can't remember. Again, naming names, I shouldn't do this. But
Ian Rainey, Russell Johnson.
Ian Rainey, that gang.
Yeah.
And poor Eric, I coached him in grade 8, and then he came up and he played senior basketball grade 9.
Yeah.
Grade 9 through 5 years of senior basketball, and poor guy had me as a coach for 6 years.
Well, that year when you were gone, I had Andrew Lawford for a coach. And
that changed VCI a lot, I think. That's when rugby came in.
Yeah, so we had him for basketball, and we did nothing but run the whole time. I ran so many stairs with Lawford, and I remember coming into school one day. It was in the spring, and he met me at the front door. He's like, "Jackson, 12 o'clock, room 203. I'm like, "What did I do? I just got here. How could I be in trouble already?" So 12 o'clock, I go upstairs for God knows what, and I walk in, and it's all my buddies sitting there. Andrew Allen, all the guys that Jeff was probably there, all the guys that played all the sports. And so we sit down, nobody knows why we're there. And in he walks with a television and a rugby ball. And he pops in a VHS of a rugby game and says, "You guys are on the rugby team, and our first practice is on Saturday morning." So that
was a historic moment.
Yeah, so I think we all puked after the first practice. It was an all-day practice, and there was a lot of running, and it was a lot of fun. I think I actually scored the first points for VCI, and
did you?
Yeah, I was the kicker, so I was the fly half.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah, so I think I kicked our first points in, but. I know Andrew Allen played one game, and next thing I knew, he was on the provincial.
The junior team.
Yeah, provincial team.
I remember that. Yeah, that was great. That was a great introduction. It was just fortunate that you had that Andrew Lawford.
Yeah, it was Andrew Lawford.
Yeah.
And then
I'm thinking of his brother Ian, who played basketball at VCI one year. But Andrew and Ian went on to Rockland. And there was big competition, big rivalry between Rockland and VCI in rugby.
Yeah, we had. Trevor was at our school the following year. Trevor Allen.
I brought a bit of rugby back when I came back from Australia in '89, and we played rugby league, touch rugby league. But I didn't have a rugby background, and Andrew did. Yeah. He played with Ottawa Irish, so he took it to up the next several levels.
Yeah.
And rugby's still being played, isn't it, at VCI?
I'm not sure about now, but it was up until recently, at least. The Wayne Lee took it over, and then we had Mr. Guzman, I believe his name was, from South Africa. He was helping out with it. It was very successful, very popular sport.
That's the team that came out to. There's a team came out to Kamloops.
Yes.
And I went over to see the guys and watch them play a couple matches. It was great to see it. And a lot of the players were sons of guys that I've coached. Like Craig Leroy is Jeff Leroy's son. I
Yeah.
coached, and I can't. The Cross boy, Adam.
Adam Cross, yeah.
Adam Cross, his dad, Bruce Cross. I played football, good athlete, good sports family.
Yeah.
And there were a few others as well. And it was a great opportunity to see these guys play and see how far rugby had come. You guys were on the right track when I left after having Andrew there. And things really got going well.
Yeah.
And,
so you mentioned you were in Australia. I remember, I think I was in grade 7 when you guys went down to Australia for a year.
My family exchange. Oh well, my teacher exchange.
Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, a few friends of mine, teacher from Thousand Islands, Ron Hungerford, who's Mr. Track and Field in Eastern Ontario and another fellow from Gannon Opry High School. They had done exchanges, and they were talking to me about it and said, "You should do this," So it perked an interest, and so I put my application in, and as it turned out, I ended up in an exchange with John Brown from Kiama, New South Wales, and it was a great year. I had a fantastic time teaching down there, learning all the Aussie sports, and loved the place. Great part of the world, and it really, worked out well. I think from both ends with the impact that John Brown had on VCI. He brought a new energy, a different energy to the school, and different activities, different sports, different approach to sports. And of course, as you say, you're in grade 7. I think Jeff was in grade 5. Year 5 in Australia.
I'm a year ahead of Jeff. But yeah. I heard Mr. Brown took the kids on a bike trip in the snowstorm.
Well, it was October. It was late. It's going to be a late fall bike trip.
Yeah.
And it snowed. Apparently. I heard about it.
Yeah.
And I was quite happy to hear about it because I'd be checking the weather a little bit before I went. But he wanted to do the bike trip before he returned to Australia, and that would be his last opportunity. That's more or less why he did it.
Okay.
And so they got it in, and they had quite an experience dealing with the weather, dealing with the cycling conditions, which weren't the best, but they did it. And I heard about it when I got back from the kids, and I think we did a canoe trip or a bike trip in the spring, or a canoe trip in the spring. I can't remember. Oops, that's my phone. Sorry. So it was a great experience for him, for John, and for me. And after that, we decided, hey, this is something we should share with other students, and we created that student exchange thing where I think the first year, you were on that first trip, we went down to Australia.
Yeah, I remember it very well. I was in your basement, and I think I was probably in grade 9 or 10, probably grade 10. And you walked down the stairs, we were playing pool, and I think maybe Eric Dagg and Peter Barton were there. And yes. You said to us, you better start saving your pennies because we're going to Australia in 2 years. And at that point, I was in. So we saved our money. We sold Christmas trees. We did everything to raise money.
Yeah. I think I said something like, you've got 2 birthdays, 2 Christmases between now and the trip. Tell everybody you want money.
Yeah, exactly.
For your airfare. And the good thing was we did fundraising. All you had to do, you had to raise your airfare. Yeah. And everything else, all the trips and excursions, I think it was about 3 weeks we were down there. Yeah. Everything was covered. And, you said the other night when I spoke to you on the phone, you kind of caught me by surprise, and you said, my mom in Australia. And then I realized, you're talking, I can't remember who she was. But that was your Aussie mom.
Yeah, Jill Dowd.
That's right.
So your son and myself and Peter and Eric had this bright idea that we would stay up the night before we went to Australia, before the flight, and get on to Australian time while we were here. So we stayed up.
Yes.
We were at Eric Dagg's house. We played video games all night. I'd never been on a plane before, so I was just so excited to be on a plane. I never slept a wink all the way to Australia. And I got there, it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I think I passed out at the supper table that night.
I think a lot of us did, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we landed in Sydney. It was first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And we got a full day ahead. And I think there was activities planned on the trip going down to Kiama along the coast.
We stopped at some beaches and
freshen up in the Australian surf.
Yeah.
But I'd heard that you guys kind of pulled an all-nighter, and I think I'd mentioned, get yourself ready for this trip. You're going all the way halfway around the world.
Yeah.
You be prepared physically and mentally, and but you guys got being young. I knew I had to be prepared for it, and it was a great first exchange. We did 2 more of them.
Yeah.
Randy Hall, she was on one.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to start naming names. There's so many BCI kids. I think it was a life-changing event for them, a life-changing experience.
Yeah. So I went back on the third exchange as a chaperone.
That's right.
And I still keep in contact with more of the people I met on the third exchange. So Kim Toya, who lives down there, she's got a daughter that's a year older than my daughter, Haley. So Randy's daughter, my daughter, and Chase Albright's daughter have been FaceTiming with her, and they've had all kinds of questions to ask, and I've told them stories. I had a pretty rough trip the first time I went down there. Physically, I scraped my one side of my body diving for a try in a parking lot, and I sprained my ankle.
Broke your nose.
Broke my nose. Yeah, Jeff broke my nose, and right before I had to get up and thank the town for having us. So it was a rough trip. So my kids have heard all these stories, so they're getting to know this little girl in Australia right now, and hopefully, by the time they're done high school, we'll be able to plan a trip down and go see them. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's all these things happen as a result of a 3-week trip to Australia. It's amazing, and the lifelong contacts you have, and lifelong friendships you have and develop.
Yeah.
You said it was your first flight ever. I don't think you're the only one that was a first-time flyer, and I think it was a total of 26 hours of travel time from Ottawa to Kingsford Smith Airport in Sydney, and I can't remember what the flying time is. I think it's something like about 18 or 20 hours of flying time in the air.
Yeah.
So.
And then our on the third trip it was worse because we had a layover in Vancouver.
That's right.
And then
That's right.
I remember there were pictures when we got back and we started exchanging pictures because no one was to leave the airport.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden there were some pictures showed up of people out in a limo touring Vancouver.
I think I was asleep somewhere in the airport.
Yeah.
But that was Chase Albright's trip, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Who else was on that trip?
Carrie Albright or Carrie Mode.
Yes.
Brent Campbell, Pat Johnson.
Pat Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all had a great experience.
Yeah, I tease Chase all the time because the one day that he had to go to school, him and a bunch of them skipped school, and I think he caught them down at the local pub.
It seems to me I remember something of that. But boys being boys, I suppose, and Andre Leduc.
Yep.
But part of the experience, being away from home, they handled it well.
Yeah.
They represented their school and their country very well. You all did. You all had a great experience and did a good job in representing BCI. And the memories there, I was back in Kiama, it would be 3 years ago in 2017. Mike Mike and Kylie's wedding in Bali, which is just north of Perth, Australia. We did a kind of a circle tour, Bali to Perth, Australia, to Kiama, and then over to New Zealand. We spent a couple of weeks with Suzanne Murray at their place, and so I was back in Kiama and saw John Brown and met a lot of the people that I taught with. Didn't see too many. Garth Barrett's family, we saw their parents, but mostly Bill Johnsey and other teachers that I taught with, and had a great time, and a lot of good memories came up. And from their perspective, having come up to, of course, their experience is the reverse, coming up to Canada, having a Canadian experience, especially the one in 1998.
Yes.
The ice storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were probably in school at that time. You were in college at that time, weren't you?
I had just started working at Tobacco.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was quite an experience for those guys. And to see Canada under those circumstances, their parents down in Australia, they'd heard on the news about this ice storm, and they thought, oh, we're never going to see our kids again. And they came back full of fantastic experiences and memories. So, that was one trip led to another, and the last one was after I retired. I retired in 2001, and I think the last trip was 2002. Ben Seversky, Pat Johnson, Chase, all those guys. And there's always a sports component there as well. I think we probably played soccer or volleyball or basketball, something of that effect.
Yeah.
We always incorporated outdoor education. The theme was outdoor education and sport. And of course, there's a cultural exchange. A school. I think you're all in school for at least 1 or 2 days with your Aussie partner, and you gained a little bit of knowledge of the education experience in Australia.
How is Bob Brown doing these days?
John Brown?
John Brown, sorry.
He's doing well. He's had a few health things to deal with, but he's very resilient. He's still, when we were there, we went out kayaking, and he still cycles. He's had a bit of an issue with vertigo, so his surfing, he has to be accompanied by so Bill Johnsey takes him out surfing, and he's hoping to get over this vertigo so he can he was quite an accomplished surfer in his time, and an accomplished rugby. He played professional rugby league, Cronulla, and his younger brother was a world-class surfer at one time, one of the top surfers in the world. So he comes from a surfing background, so he wants to get back on the surfboard full on, and I'm sure he will. He's got a surf ski. I think he's able to sit down a little kayak that he goes up to surf with that. And he's still very active, very vital. I was in touch with him by email just before Christmas, and he's doing very well.
Yeah, the last time we were there, I think he was undergoing some cancer treatment, maybe.
Yes, he was. Yeah. He's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he's got through that.
Good.
And he's okay that way. But he's how old is he? He's the same. I'll put it this way: he's the same age as Gary Barton.
Okay.
And so I'll put a number to that. a couple of years older than I am. And so you get up to in your 70s, you have some issues to deal with, and you just move forward.
Yeah. I remember walking through the rainforest with him, and a big snake went across in front of us, and he took off into the bush after the snake, and he comes walking back, and he's like, "This is the brown snake. It's the second most poisonous snake in the world," and we're all like, eyes wide open and a little bit freaked out. I heard legends that he had paddled out to see a shark in the surf to check it out to see if it was a shark or a dolphin. Those were the stories that the kids in Kiama were telling about Mr. Brown. So
Yeah. I'm sure he surfed amongst the sharks. There's sharks in those waters. And,
Yeah.
it's just a way of life.
Yeah.
But they've got the most dangerous species there, just like we do. That's the two-legged species.
Yes.
Most dangerous species in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one you got to look out for.
Yeah.
But he's quite a man. He's got a spirit to him that's insurmountable. And VCI got a chance to experience that the year that he was there, and got to know him a lot more than I did. And the way that exchange played out was we were on our way to Australia, and we stopped off at my brother's place in Vancouver, and John landed in Vancouver and stayed with my brother, and so we met up that way, and we went up for a ski. John snowboarded, and we skied up at Whistler. It was 2 or 3 days he was there, and then he was on his way to east to Vankleek Hill after Christmas to start his it was starting his school year, because he just finished the school year's ends in December and picks up in February. But meeting all the Canadians and at VCI and having a Canadian experience for himself. But that was an interesting way to meet, and as I said, VCI got to know him a lot more than I did over that year.
Yeah.
But over the years since, we've hooked up several times with the exchanges. And the last trip, we spent some time with him. We went out for a kayak and in Minamura River.
Yeah.
And it was had a great time. And went out for dinner a few times and had some interesting talks about all the experiences we'd shared and about his Canadian experience. And I can't remember specifically, but he mentioned a few things that, for example, he was out running in the off the school property in the back bush, and he found this injured groundhog. So he brought the groundhog to treat this thing. He wrapped it up in his shirt and brought it into Gary Barton. And Gary said, "Here, give me that thing. I'll take care of it now." And I'm sure Gary did.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. He would in the middle of winter, it's minus 20 out, and he'd go back to our house for lunch or whatever, and in gym shorts, and something a Canadian wouldn't do, but to and fro wearing gym shorts and outside, and thrashing around in the snow and with a t-shirt and gym shorts on.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff like that. But that's John Brown, and that's the way he is.
Yeah. You mentioned Suzanne Murray a little bit before. I was actually talking to her while I was preparing for this, and she had a couple of questions for you. I should have mentioned them earlier.
Oh no.
She asked me to ask you about a steamroller when you were in university.
A steamroller.
Yeah. Did you work with your dad or?
Yeah, that's when I was working on my summer job. Was working one of the best jobs other than teaching. Summer job. I was working on the Regional Roads Commission.
Okay.
And we would do road repairs, and in the town. I don't know if you're familiar with the geography of Hamilton area, but there's the Niagara Escarpment, which is about 300 feet high, and there's a road that comes down. There's a little switchback underneath a railway line, and we're patching that road with tar and gravel and so on, and driving the roller had to be driven down this incline, down this road, and the thing slipped out of gear, and it's running away on us, and there's my son. So I pointed it uphill, and we just jumped and let the thing roll. So that was, and because I knew we were coming to a little switchback, and there might be some vehicles coming the other way. So we leapt off that thing, and no harm done today. And they recovered the thing, fixed it, and we were back on the road with it the next day.
Oh, good. She also mentioned how she was sleeping at one of the canoe trips, and she heard someone throwing rocks into the water, and you had told her that you thought it was a moose, and one of your students came up with a good line. She didn't tell me what it was, but
yeah. Well, the night before, around the campfire, the campfires were always great in those canoe trips. We played various leadership games and have some good chats and so on. And I said, well, don't be surprised if you, in the middle of the night, there might be some moose come around. I knew there were moose around. I saw some hoof prints. And if you hear something like somebody throwing a rock in the water, plunk, 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 that could very well be a moose. So the next day we're doing breakfast, and I can't remember who it was. One of the students said, Mr. Vedan, how do those moose throw those rocks in the water? And I just doubled over laughing. Okay, explanation needed here.
Yeah, she actually told me who the student was, but I won't mention their name. That's
we got a teaching moment here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the many odd things that happened, fun things that happened on those trips, and there were many of them.
Yeah.
There are many of them. Now they're memories and fond memories for sure.
Yeah, well, my grade, my food group, Peter Barton was in it, and Jean-Luc Menard, and Brian Stam. Do you remember Brian?
I remember Brian, yeah.
Yeah, so Brian, I don't think he had the greatest house life, and he was frequently absent from school, and he missed the day we were supposed to plan our food. So he asked me what he should bring, so I said, I don't know, bring some potatoes. So that's all he brought was a bag of potatoes, like a 40-pound bag of potatoes.
Oh, shit. Well, that works.
Yeah.
Spread them around.
And we were the only group that didn't have any girls in the group, so everyone figured we were going to starve for some reason. And I think we won the stewing competition, and we made poutine for everybody in the group because Brian had brought this big thing of potatoes. So
yeah. The stew competition was great.
Yes, and, especially for the judges.
I got fooled one time. The best tasting stew happened. Somebody brought along a bunch of ketchup, and I said no ketchup, and somebody stuck in some ketchup and put it in their stew to give it a little bit of flavor. But it was good stew. Yeah, and it was all. I don't think I had any disappointments in any of the food groups. There was one particular group, though. I remember a food group brought a stack of frozen pizzas, and that was their menu planning. So they had about 20 frozen pizzas, and that was what they were going to eat for 3 days or 4 days or whatever it was. And so we divvied it up, and I think we all had pizza one night, but then we incorporated everybody into a balanced diet, let's say.
Yeah. One other thing here. I'm just looking at my list. So you were my hockey coach for much of my minor hockey career. Every second year, Jeff would catch up to me, and
that's right.
Yeah, we had some good times. Jeff was mentioning. Do you remember the night I cut my throat open?
Yes.
My neck. That was I had fallen on a skate, and I played another shift or two, and I asked Derek Hall if I had a scratch on my neck, and the blood was kind of...
yeah, I remember that.
Coming out.
So first aid kicked in, and we took care of you. And, you're here to talk about it today.
I am, yeah.
Well, yeah, you had a neck protector on too, didn't you?
I did. My mother went out and bought me the biggest neck protector she could find the next day.
I remember I was thinking your mom was going to freak out.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her. That could have been bad, but we dealt with it. And, it was great fun coaching you guys, and like you said, I had you every second year, and I remember when the first year I had you guys, Michael Steele, Andrew, Derek Hall, also Sarah, Eric Dagg, Peter Barton. Again, I'm naming names.
Charlie Demers and
yes, yeah. And great fun. You guys were just first into your skates and doing all the skating drills to try and get you guys to use all 4 edges of the skate, all 2 edges of the skate, and it worked out fairly well.
Yeah.
And some of you guys are still playing hockey.
Oh yeah, I probably shouldn't be, but
but
I am. Yeah, we still have fun.
Yeah.
So
I still get out for a skate. There's a pond, skating pond up on Silver Star. I get out, have a skate, and go through the motions, just to bring back some memories and keep the legs going.
Yeah, Jason Hall asked me to ask you about the Sportsman League. I think I used a picture from the Sportsman League actually on the Facebook post.
That's right. That Sportsman League started in January 1976, I believe, was when the arena opened. It might have started the next year. And that team was Hudson Sporting Goods. Mike Hudson had a sporting goods shop, and he sponsored the team, and it was pretty good hockey. We had it was a strong, to use a term, a beer league, but it was a good level of beer league hockey, and a lot of guys that played good level of hockey, and very competitive. There was a Saint Eugene team. There was L'Orignal, Saint Bernardin, ourselves, Vanklekill. Was there another Vanklekill? But it was good competitive hockey and good fun, a good way to get things going in the new arena.
Yeah. Who was the best player in the league?
Ian McCray had played pretty good level hockey. He was a good player, a good teammate, good leader.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good hockey players. There was, again, naming names, there was a pretty good brand of hockey. I'm not sure if it's still going. Is there a men's league in hockey in Vanklekill?
No. So there was an old timers league. They played on Monday and Friday nights, and they kept on pushing the age back to keep Mark Mahan out of the league because he was too strong. So it was an over 35 league, and then it became an over 37 league.
Okay.
So I turned 37 and I played for 1 year, and then it kind of folded up. So Jason Hall has the ice time for the old timers, but half the time we're playing the junior C guys. So it's pretty quick. I should retire. And then Wednesday nights, Norm Solway has another group, and it's mostly younger guys too, with a few old guys sprinkled in. So
Norm Solway, he was a good hockey player, good athlete.
Yeah, he's still not bad.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he's very competitive.
Oh yeah.
And he's coaching hockey there.
Norm is retired. I think he coached his son until he was done junior C, and
okay.
Yeah, and now he's our bylaw officer now. So.
Was he?
Yeah. So yeah, you're skating some of the time. What else do you do in your free time?
Watch TV, read, stay up to date with stuff, walk. The seasons here are quite tame compared to Vanklekill. The winters aren't bad at all, so you can get out and about and walk, but mostly skiing and this time of year. And I was curling a bit. I had a knee replacement.
Oh, really?
That was 5 years ago. And I came through that well, and I got back on skis. I had been snowboarding, and still like to snowboard and ski. And was involved in the community a little bit. Community Futures, Western Economic Diversification office here in town. My brother-in-law in Vancouver recruited me to sit on their board, so I was on that board for a while. I refereed some basketball when I first got here, and got involved with curling. It's a pretty good level of curling here. So the Women's Worlds was here, and my wife and I got involved with that on the organizing committee. And 1 year I was involved with the World Cup of Nordic Skiing here in Silver Star. My next door neighbor asked me to organize all the transportation for all the athletes and all the public. So I did that and got involved. It was interesting to see all these world-class athletes because all the athletes that medaled in the Olympics the following year. That was in December. Following year would be January or February. They were all here. They all competed here.
Okay.
So So it was good to see that caliber of athlete and to be involved in that. But slowing down a bit, playing a lot of golf, doing a lot of bike riding. And the bike riding season here is quite a bit longer than Vankleek. So usually by mid-February, you get out on the road. And,
oh, really? Okay.
I pick my days though. If it's not too cold, don't do it. But so it's a good environment here to be active and be out. And, I like to do something physically active every day, and I feel something's wrong if I don't. And some days it's only a walk, but there's some pretty good walks around here with some pretty good elevation changes, so get a bit of a workout that way.
Yeah, I think that was a theme for our phys ed classes, to be physically fit for life. So I think you're definitely living that out.
Yeah, dealing with a few health issues, but trying to stay on top of it and move forward and stay active. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
To be active and on your feet and doing something, and even if it's just out for a walk, a daily walk.
Yeah. Do you have any plans on coming back to Vankleek to visit at all, or?
Oh, I hope to.
Yeah.
I was back there not last summer, but before for Steve Barton's golf tournament, and I'm hoping Steve's going to do that again, and I'll definitely be back next time for that one.
Good.
But I'd like to. There's so many memories, so many friends, and it's not my original hometown, but it's like a hometown to me. You live in a place for 31 years or so, and you create so many friendships. And but I must say that Facebook is amazing to stay in contact with people.
Yes.
So many of my friends on Facebook are former students, and I stay up to date on what's going on in your lives, and it's wonderful to see and share my experiences here, but also share people's lives and what's going on with their children, and it's quite an amazing thing to have.
Yes, and I'm just looking, like, I go to Kiama on Google Maps all the time and drive the streets of Kiama and reminisce about our time there, and I'm thinking, like, when our kids are older, when they're our age, they're going to be able to go back and pick a date that they want to see what Vankleek looked like in 2016, and they'll be able to go back and drive around Vankleek. So I I'll often do that. Google Earth, Vankleek, Kiama, some of the various places I've traveled, and it was great to see the Louise Sproul Christmas tours of Vankleek. Yes.
It was just like you were there. And Gary and Jean Barton sent us a book. I just got it a couple of days ago with all the houses in Vankleek, and there's that aerial video of Vankleek in there. And, it's amazing.
Yeah, Louise was actually on the podcast 2 episodes ago, and we talked about we talked about the book and everything she's doing. So
I remember when Louise was at VC. I don't think I taught Louise, but I remember when she was there. Good student, and she's done fantastic work with the review.
Oh yes, for sure. She like I said, she's the stir that stirs the drink here, or the straw that stirs the drink in town here. She keeps everything going, everyone on their toes. So.
Yeah, she certainly does.
Well, I think we'll wrap up, sir. That was really great, and it was nice catching up with you. And
likewise, I enjoyed it.
Hopefully next time we see each other, it'll be in person, and we can maybe do it again and talk about some more stuff. So
hopefully I'll be able to. Hopefully, next summer. I don't know the way things are going. It doesn't look like it, but maybe the following summer, we'll see what happens when we get back down to some normalcy.
Yes.
And get through this.
Okay.
So, I wish everybody the best who's listening and following this. And thanks for doing this, Jason.
Yeah, no problem. Say hello to Mrs. Vedan for me.
Will do.
Okay.
Bye now.
Okay, thanks, sir.